With all these insights given, in all my debates about church-going folks, those people who sit in the pews, in all the complaints, I believe we can distill the criticism to just two things. The first is the people seem unchanged, that is, unregenerate human beings, no different than the unbaptized. And the second complaint is that the people are not happy, or at least they don't appear so. It's my contention, though, that if these critiques are true, they are merely two sides of just one coin. Let's try to address the first issue, that they seem unchanged. When you look at some church-going, pew-sitting folks, they are filled with gossip and lukewarmness and unholy indifference and ingratitude toward the immense gift that they have been given, and it seems apparent. Not to mention the manner of dress comes across as casual, if not sometimes flat-out risque, rather than formal. How would I respond to this? I don't deny it, but at the same time, I think there needs to be an understanding of why it's the case, rather than pretending it's not there. I can think of 3 reasons why this is so. The first is ignorance. The second is spiritual warfare. The third is mirroring of the leaders. First, on ignorance. Most people who are sitting in the pews are more likely than not poorly formed in faith and morals. This lack of education and inspiration is exactly what makes some people seem unchanged. Just as much, and I often could take myself on this side of the problem, one gets caught up in the ideological camps and identities that the holy faith one initially has becomes distorted and twisted, if not corrupted or lost, choked out by ideological calculations against the inspirations of the Spirit. The second, on spiritual warfare, we need to remember that the adversary attacks those who are actually doing something which foils his plans. The Catholic Church, the one holy Catholic and Apostolic Church founded by our Lord Jesus Christ for the salvation of souls, is certainly going to be attacked in her various members, more than any other vice I can think of those who actually love our Lord's Church, will be subject to the attacks particularly of sloth or acedia and despondency, usually manifesting under the form of cynicism, having become more embittered by the world. It's a serious temptation that we often need to keep in mind as we look at the person in the pews. As a brief aside, sloth or acedia is a dislike of things spiritual. So we go from a state of recollection on the one thing necessary to a state of fragmentation on the many unnecessary things. Again, distractions, to take us from the love of God. This could explain also the seemingly unchanged nature of those in the pews. Finally, we have a mirroring of the leaders. Now, if the hierarchy, or those in charge of leading the rest in prayer and sacrifice to God, seem irreverent in their worship, it's inevitable, then, that we would too. In the Catholic Church, there is a saying, lex orandi, lex credendi, lex vivendi, or, as we worship, so we believe, so we live. It's very true. Wherever you are, how you worship, both privately and publicly, determines what you believe, and that influences how you live. So if the liturgy is done with greatest reverence, as Holy Mother Church asks, then your beliefs will become more firm and orthodox, and you'll start to live in accord to that reality. But if you're around a liturgy that seeks to entertain more than inspire, then what you believe will be only too human, and so our lives untransformed. As a brief aside, in answering this critique, I think it's important to remember the words of St. Paul. Quote, "For you are dead, and your life is hid with Christ in God." Close quote. That is the epistle to the Colossians, chapter 3, verse 3. Now, it's not to say you're physically dead. Rather, it's simply to say that none of us knows what God is working in the heart of a man. Therefore, we should not be so quick to definitively judge those in the pews just because they may seem untransformed. Yes, you should correct them, but not to the point of condemnation. Now, as for the second issue, they seem miserably unhappy. They say the God of life, joy, and consolation dwells with them, but their appearances say otherwise. What do I say to this? It's, in a certain sense, a progression of the first problem. And again, I do not pretend that it's not there, but rather than dismissing them, I can only offer you reason as to why it's the case. Prior, there were 3 reasons, so again, now there are 3 reasons to explain in a similar progression. The first is a willful ignorance, the second is a spiritual defeatism, and the third is a nominalism, or in name only. When I say willful ignorance, I don't mean they don't know. Rather, I mean they know something and they wish they hadn't known it, because now it obliges them to stop something they're engaged in or to start something they dislike. So it's more of a malicious, angry response to truth. And so in that interior struggle, it's said in them that they no longer can be always joyous in the Spirit's consolation. When I say spiritual defeatism, it's very similar to the prior cause, except it's more so a sense of their own awareness of their own weakness, seemingly unchanged, faulty life. Eventually, if they take themselves seriously enough, they give up in their will, while their intellect still knows the truth. And this interior tension could also produce a sense of despondency. When I said nominalism, I mean they may go with their bodies, but their heart and mind is far from it all. This, of course, is the logical fruit of mirroring a set of leaders who were in charge of educating and forming us, yet have failed. Eventually, the biggest concern here is apostasy. At the end of the day, their problem could probably be summed up under some manifestation of the Pharisaical mentality creeping in. However, at this time, a crucial question must be asked. Is this mentality inherent to those who go to sit in a pew in a church? Does sitting in a pew make you a Pharisee? No, of course not. The Pharisaical mentality is a vice rooted in all things to our self-love. It can be found in all extreme sides, and it is in this the heart of all men, whether they sit in a pew or not.